19 years old. You have told everyone you know that you are going to be a doctor. You said it at Thanksgiving dinner. You said it on your college application. You said it to the girl at the party who asked what your major is. You have never touched a patient. You have never held a scalpel. You have never seen a dead body. But you are pre-med, and in your mind, that means something. Your life is organic chemistry. That is not a metaphor. You sit in a lecture hall with 300 other students who also told everyone they were going to be doctors. By the end of the semester, half of them will switch to business. The professor doesn't learn your name. He doesn't try. The curve is brutal. It's set by students who study 14 hours a day and still barely sleep. You get a 68 on your first exam. You sit in your car in the parking garage for 20 minutes, staring at the steering wheel. You don't call anyone. You don't know what you'd say. You volunteer at the hospital because your advisor told you that medical schools want to see clinical hours. You wear a lanyard with a badge that says "Volunteer" in large red letters. It's there so nobody confuses you for someone who matters. You refill water pitchers. You push wheelchairs. You deliver flowers to rooms where people are dying. You smile because you don't know what else to do. A nurse asks you to grab a blanket. You feel useful for the first time in 3 months. You shadow a doctor for 4 hours. He lets you listen to a heartbeat through his stethoscope. You go home and think about it for a week. You study for the MCAT like your life depends on it. It does. Every practice score feels like a verdict. You take it on a Saturday morning in a testing center that smells like anxiety and recycled air. You score well enough. You apply to 25 medical schools. You get rejected from 19. You get waitlisted at 4. You get accepted to 2. You pick the one that gives you more financial aid. You are $200,000 in debt before you see your first patient. Welcome to medicine. Level 2, the medical student. 4 years. That is what stands between you and the letters MD after your name. The first 2 years are classrooms and textbooks and a volume of information that does not seem physically possible for a human brain to hold. You memorize every bone in the body, every muscle, every nerve, every artery. You learn the names of diseases you have never heard of and will never forget. You study pathology and pharmacology and microbiology. You learn how the body works, and then you learn every single way it can fail. Your first anatomy lab is the day you realize this is real. There is a body on the table. A person who donated themselves to science so that you could learn. You are handed a scalpel and told to make the first incision. Your hands shake. The student next to you looks like she might pass out. The smell is formaldehyde, and something underneath formaldehyde that you will never be able to describe but will never forget. You cut into human skin for the first time, and the room goes very quiet. You name your cadaver because calling them the body feels wrong. You spend 4 months with this person. You learn more from them than from any textbook. You think about them years later at random moments, in the shower, in traffic, in the middle of surgery. Third year is clinical rotations. They throw you into the hospital and you rotate through every department. Surgery, internal medicine, pediatrics, psychiatry, obstetrics, emergency medicine. You follow attending physicians around like a shadow, with a short white coat and a stethoscope you barely know how to use. You are asked questions on rounds in front of everyone, and when you don't know the answer, the silence is loud enough to hurt. You learn to say, "I don't know, but I'll find out," because making something up is worse. You see your first patient die during your internal medicine rotation. An 84-year-old man with heart failure. You were in the room when the monitor flatlined. The attending called it. The nurse turned off the machines. You stood there not knowing where to put your hands. Nobody told you what to do when that happens. Nobody teaches you how to carry that home. You pick a specialty. This is the decision that shapes the rest of your career. Surgery means 5 to 7 more years of training and a lifestyle that revolves around the operating room. Family medicine means clinic work and long relationships with patients. Emergency medicine means shift work and chaos and never knowing what's coming through the door. You agonize over it. You make pro and con lists. You talk to residents who look exhausted and ask them if they'd do it again. Most of them say yes. Some of them hesitate before they say it.
Level 3, the intern. You graduated medical school. You have the degree. You are technically a doctor.
You know nothing. That is not self-deprecation. That is the universal experience of every intern who has ever walked into a hospital on July 1st, which is the day new residents start across the country. The July effect. Hospitals get a little more dangerous in July because every new doctor is learning on the job, and the learning curve is a cliff. You work 80 hours a week. That's the legal limit, and everyone pretends it's enforced. Some weeks, it's closer to 90. You take 28-hour calls where you are in the hospital overnight and expected to function the next day. You sleep in a call room that smells like every tired person who has slept there before you. The mattress is thin. The pillow is thinner. Your pager goes off 15 minutes after you close your eyes, and you are upright and moving before you are fully conscious. You write orders. You draw blood. You put in IVs when the nurses are too busy. You present patients on morning rounds to the attending and the senior residents, and you try not to stumble over your words while reciting lab values from memory. You get things wrong. You order the wrong test. You forget to check a result. A senior resident pulls you aside and corrects you, and you want to disappear into the floor. You go home after a 14-hour shift and sit on your couch and eat cereal from the box and wonder if you made a terrible mistake choosing this career. Then your phone buzzes with a text from a patient's family member, thanking you for being kind to their mother, and you put the cereal down and cry a little, and go to bed and wake up and do it again. Level 4, the resident. You survived intern year. You are now a second year, then a third year, then however many years your specialty requires. Surgical residents do 5 to 7 years. Internal medicine does 3. The years blend together. The hospital becomes your entire world. You know which vending machine has the best snacks. You know which bathroom on the 3rd floor is always empty. You know which attending will grill you mercilessly and which one will actually teach you something. You start making real decisions, not just writing orders someone else approved. Actual clinical judgments about actual human beings. A patient comes into the emergency department with chest pain, and you run through the differential diagnosis in your head, and you order the tests, and you read the results, and you decide whether this person is having a heart attack or a panic attack. And you are right most of the time, and wrong just enough to keep you humble. The weight of that responsibility never goes away. You just learn to carry it. You teach the interns now. You see yourself in their terrified faces. You try to be the kind of senior resident you wished you had. Patient, clear, willing to explain things twice without making them feel stupid. Some of them will be great doctors. Some of them are struggling, and you can see it, and you don't know whether to say something or let them figure it out. You say something. You pull them aside in the hallway, and you ask them if they're okay. And sometimes they say yes, and sometimes they break down and tell you everything, and you listen. Because nobody listened to you when you were in their shoes, and you promised yourself you'd be different. You lose patience. Not every day, but often enough that it changes you. A 45-year-old father of 3 comes in with abdominal pain, and you think it's an ulcer, and it turns out to be pancreatic cancer, and he's dead in 6 weeks. You saw him in the emergency room. You were the first doctor he spoke to. You told him you'd figure out what was going on. You figured it out. You wish you hadn't. You go to the bathroom after your shift and sit in the stall and press your palms into your eyes and breathe. Then you wash your hands and walk back out and see the next patient, because there is always a next patient. Your personal life is a disaster. Your friends from college are getting married, buying houses, posting vacation photos. You are on year 4 of training, making $65,000 a year, which sounds reasonable until you divide it by the hours you work, and realize you make less per hour than the hospital parking attendant. Your relationship ended because you canceled dinner for the 3rd time in a month. You missed your best friend's wedding because you couldn't get the shift covered. You tell yourself it will be worth it. You tell yourself that every day.
Level 5, the fellow. You've finished residency. You could practice medicine right now. You could go make real money for the first time in your life. Instead, you signed up for more training. A fellowship. 1 to 3 more years of specialized education in a subspecialty. Cardiology,
oncology, gastroenterology, neonatal intensive care, whatever narrow slice of medicine you decided to devote your life to. You are very good at one thing now. You are the person they call when the general doctors don't know what to do. A patient's heart is doing something unusual, and the internal medicine team calls you because you are the cardiology fellow, and hearts are your entire world. You look at the EKG and you see what they missed. You adjust the medication. You explain it to the team. You feel competent for the first time in a decade of training, and it is a feeling you will chase for the rest of your career. The fellowship is also a research machine. You publish papers. You present at conferences in hotel ballrooms where 500 doctors eat bad chicken and listen to PowerPoint slides about clinical trials. You analyze data. You run studies. You are building your academic reputation one publication at a time, because the jobs you want after this will ask how many papers you have and where you publish them. You are 32 years old. You have been in training since you were 18. 14 years. You have spent your entire adult life preparing for a career that hasn't technically started yet. Your college roommate who went into finance has a house and a 401k and 2 kids. You have a rented apartment and $280,000 in student loans and a very specific knowledge of how the electrical conduction system of the human heart works. You remind yourself that you didn't do this for the money. Some nights that feels true. Some nights it doesn't.
Level 6, the attending physician. You are done. No more training, no more supervision, no more being the student. You are an attending physician. The buck stops with you. When a patient crashes at 3 in the morning and the resident calls you, the resident is calling you because you are the final answer. There is nobody above you in the clinical chain. Your decision is the decision. If it's right, the patient lives. If it's wrong, the patient might not. You join a hospital or a practice. You see patients. You operate or you don't, depending on your specialty. You build relationships with patients who come back year after year with new problems and old complaints. You remember their names, their families, their histories. Mrs. Chen, who always brings cookies to her appointments. Mr. Davis, who won't take his blood pressure medication no matter how many times you explain why he should. The teenager with leukemia who asks you if she's going to die, and you tell her you're going to fight like hell, and you mean it. The money is real now. You make $250,000, $400,000, $600,000, depending on your specialty and location. Surgeons and cardiologists at the top, pediatricians and family medicine at the bottom. You start paying off your loans. You buy a house. You drive a car that isn't falling apart. Your family finally understands what you've been doing for the past 15 years. For about 6 months, you feel like you made it. Then you realize that the job is harder than training ever was, because now there is no one to carry your patients home with you, the ones you saved and the ones you didn't. You replay decisions in your head at 2 in the morning. Should I have ordered that scan sooner? Should I have caught that earlier? You go to morbidity and mortality conferences where doctors sit in a room and review cases where patients died and discuss what went wrong. Sometimes what went wrong is systemic. Sometimes what went wrong is you. You sit in that room and listen to your colleagues analyze your decisions, and you absorb it because that is how medicine improves. But it doesn't feel like improvement. It feels like being opened up on the table yourself. Level 7, the chief resident or department chief. They ask you to lead. Not just practice medicine, but run things. If you're in an academic hospital, you might become the chief resident first, overseeing the training of every resident in the program. You design the schedule. You mediate conflicts between residents who are too exhausted to be civil to each other. You mentor the ones who are struggling and push the ones who are coasting. You are the bridge between the attending physicians and the trainees, and both sides think you work for them. Later, if you stay long enough and prove yourself, you become the department chief. Head of surgery, chief of cardiology, director of the emergency department. You are responsible for every doctor in your department.
their performance, their behavior, their clinical outcomes. When a surgeon in your department makes a mistake, it's your problem. When the hospital administration wants to cut your department's budget, it's your fight. When a patient files a complaint, it lands on your desk. You spend more time in meetings than you ever imagined. Budget meetings, hiring committees, quality improvement reviews, credentialing boards. You became a doctor to take care of patients, and now you spend half your time in a conference room arguing about resource allocation. The paperwork is relentless. The politics are exhausting. Other departments want your operating rooms. The administration wants better numbers. The insurance companies want shorter hospital stays. You fight for your department because nobody else will. You fight for your patients because that's why you started this. You remind yourself of that on the days when the spreadsheets make you forget.
Level 8. The Chief Medical Officer. You are no longer just a doctor. You are an executive. The Chief Medical Officer, the CMO, is the highest-ranking physician in the entire hospital. Every clinical decision, every policy that affects patient care, every protocol that governs how medicine is practiced within these walls runs through you. You report to the CEO and the hospital board. You sit in rooms with lawyers and accountants and administrators who have never touched a patient, and you translate between the language of medicine and the language of business. You oversee hundreds of physicians across every department: surgeons, internists, radiologists, anesthesiologists, pathologists, emergency physicians. You set standards. You review outcomes data. You investigate when something goes wrong. When a surgeon operates on the wrong limb, you lead the inquiry. When an infection outbreak hits a ward, you coordinate the response. When a doctor is impaired, burned out, or dangerous, you are the one who has the conversation. You sit across from a colleague, sometimes a friend, and tell them they can't practice anymore. You have had that conversation more times than you want to remember. It never gets easier. You deal with crises that the public never hears about. Supply chain failures that mean the hospital might run out of a critical medication. Staff shortages that force you to close beds in the ICU. Lawsuits that could bankrupt the institution. A pandemic that fills every room and hallway with patients and turns the parking garage into a triage center, and forces you to make decisions about who gets a ventilator and who doesn't. You made those decisions. You carry those decisions. You carry the faces of the people who didn't get the ventilator. You carry them in a place that no title or salary can reach. You get sued. It happens to almost every doctor eventually. A patient has a bad outcome, and a lawyer sends a letter, and suddenly you are sitting in a deposition answering questions about a decision you made at 4 in the morning after being awake for 22 hours. The lawyer asks you why you didn't order a specific test. You explain your clinical reasoning. The lawyer asks you to explain it again. You do. The case settles, or it goes to trial, or it gets dismissed. But the feeling never fully goes away. The feeling that someone looked at the worst day of your career and decided it was negligence. You start practicing defensive medicine, ordering extra tests, extra scans, not because the patient needs them, but because you need the paper trail. The system made you this way. You still try to see patients when you can. 1 clinic day a week if you're lucky. You put on your white coat and you sit with someone and you listen to their symptoms. And for 1 afternoon, you remember why you walked into that lecture hall at 19 years old and told everyone you were going to be a doctor. Then you go back upstairs to your office and open your email, and there are 47 unread messages about budgets and compliance and credentialing, and the afternoon disappears. Level 9. The Surgeon General or Health System CEO. You have left the single hospital. You now run a health system, multiple hospitals, dozens of clinics, tens of thousands of employees, hundreds of thousands of patients a year, flowing through a system that you are ultimately responsible for. Or perhaps you've gone the public health route, and you hold a position that shapes healthcare policy for an entire state or the entire country.
You make decisions that affect people you will never meet. You decide whether to build a new cancer center or expand the emergency department. You decide whether to acquire a struggling rural hospital or let it close. You decide how resources are allocated across facilities that serve communities with vastly different needs. A wealthy suburb with excellent insurance, and a low-income neighborhood where half the patients are uninsured, and the emergency room is the only healthcare they have. Both facilities report to you. Both need funding. You choose. Every choice saves someone and fails someone else. You testify before committees. You give interviews. You write op-eds about the state of healthcare in the country. You attend galas and fundraisers where donors in tuxedos write checks that build wings and name them after themselves. You shake their hands and thank them, and you think about the nurse on the night shift who hasn't had a raise in 3 years, and the resident sleeping in a call room right now who won't go home until tomorrow afternoon. You think about the gap between the people who fund hospitals and the people who run them at 3 in the morning, and you wonder if that gap will ever close. You are 58 years old. You have been in medicine for nearly 40 years. Your body doesn't do what it used to. Your knees ache from decades of standing in operating rooms. Your eyes strain from reading charts and scans and reports. Your hands, the hands that once trembled holding a scalpel for the first time, are steady but tired. You have seen medicine change in ways you couldn't have imagined when you started. Electronic records replaced paper charts. Robotic surgery replaced open procedures. Telemedicine replaced some office visits. The diseases stayed the same. The paperwork got worse. The patients still need the same thing they always needed: someone to listen, someone to care, someone who knows what they're doing and isn't too burned out to do it well.
Level 10, the legacy. You retire. You clean out an office that accumulated 30 years of plaques and photographs and thank you cards from patients whose names you still remember. You take your white coat off the hook on the back of the door and fold it for the last time. It's worn at the cuffs. There's a faded stain on the pocket from a code blue years ago that you never got out. You should throw it away. You can't. There's a dinner in your honor. Colleagues give speeches. Former residents you trained, now attending physicians themselves, fly in from across the country. They tell stories about you. The time you stayed 36 hours straight to see a patient through a crisis. The time you yelled at a resident in the OR and then apologized an hour later and bought them coffee. The time you diagnosed something everyone else missed and saved a life that would have been lost. They call you a mentor. They call you the reason they stayed in medicine when they wanted to quit. You didn't know you had that effect. You never do while it's happening. You go home. The house is quiet. Your spouse has been patient for decades, raising kids while you were on call, eating dinner alone while you were in surgery, going to bed alone while you sat with a dying patient's family. The kids are grown. One of them is in medical school. You told her not to. She didn't listen. She has the same look in her eyes that you had at 19. That mix of terror and conviction that you can help people if someone would just let you. You recognize it. You can't protect her from what's coming. The exhaustion, the loss, the system that will try to grind her down, the patients who will break her heart, the ones who will make it all worth it. You can't protect her from any of it. All you can do is tell her the truth. That it's the hardest thing she'll ever do. That some days she'll regret it. That most days she won't. That the privilege of being trusted with someone's life at their most vulnerable moment is something that never gets ordinary, no matter how many times it happens. Somewhere, right now in a hospital, a code is being called. A team of people in scrubs is sprinting down a hallway pushing a crash cart. A resident is doing chest compressions while an attending calls out orders. A nurse is drawing up medications. A medical student is standing in the corner watching with wide eyes, heart pounding, hands shaking, wondering if this is really what they want to do with their life. It is chaos, and it is terrifying,
and it is the most important thing happening in that building at that moment. Someone's life is in the balance. And a group of strangers who trained for years and sacrificed more than anyone outside these walls will ever understand are fighting to keep that person alive. They don't know each other's last names. They don't know each other's stories. But they know exactly what to do because they've done it 100 times before, and they'll do it 100 times again.